Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another Atlas Telecast Tuesday. We have Tucker from Element Filters. Thank you so much for coming in. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
We have
Pleasure
Mr.
to be here.
Eric Hall as our model today. Great to see you, Eric. How are you today?
Good to be here.
Happy Tuesday. We have fantastic technical production, as always, from B. We have all this holding down the back end, typing away furiously, making sure that all the communications come telepathically straight to my brain from the airwaves. And we have a new colleague here joining us in the demo space today, Devonte. Everyone give a shout out to Devonte. You can't see Devonte, but he's keeping it real cool in here with us. And yeah, here we are on another Atlas Telecast Tuesday. We have a very fun and special topic for you today, filters.
Filtration. It's the filtration station right here.
So one question I've been asked is, what is the Marlboro Man's secret? Filters.
Filters. Nice. Yeah.
But
Not the kind of filters we're talking about today.
oh,
That's a little different.
but tobacco filters, right? No,
Yeah, no, for sure.
that's an OG filter, tobacco.
They were made much before cinema filters. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So no, like the tobacco cinema filter. Like tobacco is like a nice warm filter. They've kind of fallen out of favor, but in general, I mean, it's interesting. I don't know what you've heard or what you've, been hearing from people out there, but from what I've heard, people, for some reason, shy away from filters more and more these days.
Yeah.
I find that ridiculous. To me, that's utterly absurd. Like, no offense, cinematographers who don't like filters, but I'm always like, everybody wants a custom lens, but nobody's just using filters because filters allow you to adapt in real time on the film set so quickly and easily. So to me, that's one of the best strengths of a filter, besides helping keep our lungs healthy. But filters are great. I mean,
Yeah.
filters are one of the most indispensable tools. And I've been using filters since the beginning of my career in cinematography. And I feel like once you kind of realize, oh, a filter will allow me to adapt more to the situation that I'm in quickly, which is kind of often the most important aspect of functioning on a film set, is being able to not only have a great vision going in, but being able to adapt to adverse conditions, adverse scenarios, quickly respond and make sure that you're still getting an optimized image is really what I think
Totally.
is the secret sauce of a filter and one of the best tools of a cinematographer. And then I think, so we'll talk a little bit about element filters, filters in general, and then I want to get into cinematographers and entrepreneurship a little bit, because I think that that's something that represents your career and path and a little bit of my path. And I think that all cinematographers should become a little bit mindful of their entrepreneurial ability or entrepreneurial self-representation. I mean, I think it's great if you have a fantastic agent who's out there helping push you, but all of us could use a little micro master class on helping present our career possibilities, our abilities, and what makes us exceptional as individuals in order to, make your serial commercial or whatever it is that you happen to be filming,
Absolutely.
and to be adaptive and be successful.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's dig into it. Tell us a little bit about element filters.
Yeah, I mean, the story is very relevant to the Atlas Lenscope viewers in the sense that I'm a DP myself, just like Dan, as many of you know, I'm sure, and essentially just saw a gap in the market of something in the filter space that I wanted to buy as a DP owner operator myself, and didn't see the perfect combo of cost to function ratio, and that in conjunction with having a lot of time on my hands in the pandemic resulted in what we have today, which is element filters. Yeah, I mean, that's the nutshell of the short story version. Yeah.
What
how
were
I
the
got off
first
ground.
what were the first filters that you brought out in the Element lineup?
Yeah, so we started with ND filters, mostly because I myself wanted to buy a set of 4x5 NDs. I was at this sort of position in my career where I was beyond doing like one, solo videographer jobs, and now just DPing and investing in industry standard gear, as they say. And so 4x5s were a natural progression in that. And after looking into purchasing my own set that, were 4x5, blocked infrared and ultraviolet light, and were totally color neutral, I essentially didn't like the cost to quality ratio of what was out there, and thought that it could potentially be done better.
Now, this is no shade. I mean, we have friends at all the filter manufacturers pretty much. So we're friends with people at Format High Tech. We're friends with people at Schneider, Tiffin.
Totally,
Tiffin
yeah.
are near and dear to our hearts. I like the Alpha IDX filters personally. I think those are really exceptional ND filters, but they are not that cheap. But they are really color neutral. So we're not throwing any shade, but I'd be curious what those ones were that you bought that you were like, yo, I dropped all this coin on these filters and I just don't feel like I got my money's worth.
Yeah, I actually didn't buy any.
Oh, you didn't buy
that
any?
Was
okay,
part
you were
of-
shopping, but you were
I was
like,
shopping, and right as that happened, the pandemic happened, and naturally lost all my freelance gigs along with every other cinematographer under the sun. And with that, wasn't about to spend a bunch of money on some filters, and instead I spent, a lot more than I would have spent on a single set of filters in making my own set. It's kind of ironic in hindsight, but
hopefully it worked out. I mean,
it has worked out. Yeah,
the
yeah,
journey,
absolutely.
I think, the journey
Yes.
is as important as the destination sometimes.
For sure.
So, like,
yeah, and it was fun. I've learned so much along the way about actually making a product and make it do all the things you want it to do in terms of like optics and glass is like an absolute rabbit hole, as you know better than a lot of people out there. So yeah.
Has anyone out there ever bought a filter, put it on your lens, and then said, wait a minute, what just happened here? Because this was a very sharp, resolute lens with decent contrast, and then you put the filter on and you're like, wait, I can't even get sharp focus now? Anyone? Have you ever seen that? I've seen it personally. So has that happened to you before?
I've seen it especially on like the stronger strength diffusions, which right now we're running a half
Or not even
one,
diffusion.
but-
I'm talking like NDs or polarizers.
Oh, I don't think I've experienced that.
So being a budget-minded camera person and coming from nothing at the beginning of my career, I bought some very inexpensive polarizers and ND filters at the beginning of my career, and I had Zeiss Contax lenses, which are quite sharp.
Yeah.
Zeiss
Clean.
Contax are some of the most exceptional. They were an exceptional value for the money. Now they've gone up in price, but I'd say those are kind of like, in some ways, the budget super speeds. So if you like the Zeiss look, if you like super speeds, Contax AEF lens is like a really great choice. To me, I thought those were just exceptional at the time.
But you put
Some of them have
in front
Ninja
of them.
Star bokeh. But yeah, I bought these crappy filters and needed an ND, and I put these filters on. I'm like, wait a minute, like the picture's not even in focus anymore.
Yeah, that's not
And you
what
can't
we
bring
hope
it
for.
in, like-
So, do you have any idea what might have caused that? I mean, I know, but I'm curious if that is something that you'd be able to speak to.
Sure, I
'Cause I'm
mean-
sure you've gone through the process of.
Yeah, there's many factors to optics and glass in general that can affect your image. One that might not be so obvious to the eye is just like how smooth the glass actually is.
This is something I like to bring up a lot. Is that we look at something. I don't have my phone here, but if we hold up a filter or you hold up your cell phone, you go, "Oh, that's a smooth piece of glass."
Precisely,
right?
yeah. And to the eye it is, and to the finger it is, but in reality it's
The peak valley,
bumpy, yeah.
peak valley ratio. It's like the Grand
Yeah.
Canyon in there.
Which
So
some
that's-
people use to create diffusion filters as a technique. They purposefully make it bumpy sometimes that we can actually see with our eyes. But there is a big difference between like how smooth the glass actually is, and that could have an effect on whether you're able to focus or not. And yeah.
So how many fringes would you say is the standard for an element filter in terms
Fringes.
of? Yeah, fringes are a way of measuring the peak valley ratio?
Yeah, I don't have that
flatness?
number off the top of my head,
Okay.
but we have done testing with different amounts of fringing.
A lot of the time people will say
Um,
like quarter wave is within tolerance.
Yeah, I am not an engineer myself.
Yet.
I've gotten there almost in the process of making these filters, but it's been a lot of like, hey, I want it to do this, and then I have a team of people that goes "Boo-doo-doo-doo," and they make it do
Nice.
that, and which is a great position to be in because as a DP, primarily myself, that is, it allows me to hold those two spaces career-wise at the same time, which is great.
That's really important because, in sort of the Venn diagram of function, oftentimes there are people that are making products for our space who literally have absolutely no clue about what we as camera people do
For sure.
on a day-to-day basis. And then sometimes there's people in our space in cinematography who also have no idea what we do in this space, but then they do it anyway. But then there's people that can overlap those spaces, and that's like a really solid foundation. So
Absolutely.
the best way I describe it is that we're always trying to increment forward, one foot in front of the other, step by step, learning every day. And to me, that's the most valuable thing about working on set, is that we are forced to really do a lot in a very small amount of time and increment. So we come to the set with a blueprint, right? That's our script or our pages for the day. We have to try to achieve that in a very limited amount of time with often a limited amount of resources, but make it seem unlimited and exceptional. And so I think that's been one of my key motivating factors in becoming who I am and building this company, is seizing an opportunity and incrementally leveling up every day as much as possible, working with a team to put our feet one foot in front of the other, stepping forward as much as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can tell when you're on set working with a product whether it was created by somebody who knows what they're doing and has had those experiences on set versus not. Like it becomes so apparent when you use something and it's either clunky or awkward to use or the most efficient, piece of kit that you've ever used, and you're like, wow, this was thought out from beginning to end. And I think that, as you said, is super apparent in the products that we all know and use and love every day.
So I'm curious, like when you started the journey of making the ND filters, what were the primary camera systems that you found yourself using?
Yeah, I at the time owned a Red camera, Red Komodo.
Nice.
And so with that, there's every camera has a different version of an OLPF that they have. Some cameras have internal NDs, some don't. Obviously Reds until recently did not. And so it was very relevant to make NDs for that reason.
That makes a lot of sense, because one of the questions that someone had posed to me prior to the stream today was, hey, why would someone choose to use a filter, an ND filter in a matte box
For sure.
instead of an internal ND filter?
Yeah.
And I think like a lot of the relatively affordable internal variable ND filters, for instance, like built into a E mount to PL, or like an RF mount like on the Komodo to PL,
Yeah.
sometimes they'll skimp on the quality of the filter to make it hit a price point that's in that RF mount to PL or E mount to
For
PL
sure.
adapter.
Yeah. And there's a world where, every filter can be used, like those are very convenient. You don't have to load them. If you don't have ACs, you're just working by yourself. But if you want the color accuracy, having external NDs is great. And then there's also the conversation of infrared and ultraviolet light, which is where full spectrum NDs come in, and hot mirror infrared light IR NDs like ours come in as well. And that's a conversation that as you dive down the rabbit hole, you start to realize is quite important in terms of preserving your image and having the most neutral image you can.
So let's get those filters in these matte boxes. Am I right?
We actually already have. We have a ND.3 in, as well as an Opaline diffusion. This is the 1 strength, which is the strongest one we have, which you can see, on Eric's face. I don't know if you want to. We can pull that in and out for
Oh yeah,
to
please.
see the difference.
So this is with the filter,
This is without the diffusion, and then with the diffusion. And again, this is the strongest one, so it's going to give you the closest to like a dream look. That's creamy and blooms the highlights and etc. And the best way to describe this, I don't love to make direct comparisons, but the best way to describe this is sort of a cross between a glimmer glass and a pro mist, just because people are obviously very familiar with those. Those have been around for a while. We sort of took the elements that we like about those, excuse the pun, and mashed those together to create this, which is, pretty new for us, which is exciting, but yeah. What has been your experience in, have you tested many different diffusion filters over the years? What do you find that you are drawn to in those?
Well, I think that's one of the best thing about filters, to be honest, is that filters can be very personal. And so people often collect a whole case of filters that are their personal favorites for personal specific reasons. And one of my favorite filters, and this is very old school, but I managed to find it at a yard sale of all places, was a set of glass laminated net filters. Okay. So these are Mitchell nets. And to me, those are actually probably my favorite thing in my collection. There are things about these nets that are suboptimal for certain things. So if you're like nitpicking or pixel peeking and going like, well, the bokeh, I see some disruption in the bokeh, because they will manifest in the bokeh quite a bit. Right. So depending on what you're looking at, they'll show up more or less. But I love the way that they flare. I love the way that they make human faces look. Like there's different densities of the net. I should have brought those with me today because that would have been fun just to look at. But a lot of people back in the day would also put stockings over the rear of the lens. And what's funny is that I think so many lenses have been ruined over the years by people actually using
the coatings get slowly worn down, and
well, they're putting the net on, but then they would actually use clear nail polish to adhere it to the lens. And it's like, that's cool, but the funny thing is that's a time when typically the lenses and the film stock, it was a challenge for people to get enough contrast and resolution. So like there was always this battle between cinematographers' worldview on it and then sort of distribution worldview, which is like by the time they strike an answer print and they go to projection and there's like a million answer prints that are out there, then they're trying to preserve resolution. So I think it's really interesting to see sort of authorship, the notion of authorship of the image, and then distribution of the image. Those two forces are always sort of at odds with each other. And I think it's a very fascinating dialectic to look at, because I like to think of cinematographers, we're the gatekeepers of the image, right? So we're fighting to make sure that artistically speaking, the integrity of the image matches the vision of the director and of what we see in our mind's eye, and sort of tells the visual story. And then there's this whole mechanism and machine about distributing the film, which is essential, because if it's not distributed, then people won't see it. And in a way, like modern times, distribution through online resources like YouTube, all the way to platforms like Netflix, it's great that those exist because they're broadening the scope of possibility for people to see things they wouldn't have otherwise seen. But then there's other pros and cons that come along with that. And then sort of how the stories of the images may be manipulated in one way or another through those mechanisms. So without getting too political about it, there's a lot to look at and a lot to think about. And I think as camera people, as artists, we have to be mindful and don't be afraid to be transgressional, confrontational, and fight for what you think is the best image, whether that means putting a filter on the lens on the matte box or diffusing it as you see fit. Fight for what you think is the right way imaging wise. And filters are important in that way because I think it is a tool of an artist to regulate, because a lot of people will say, oh, we'll filter it in post.
It's a different look.
It's different. It's different. I mean, I am someone who's a fan of post-production people, post-production efforts, and post-production mechanisms, but I also believe in filtration on the lens, on the day, and the way that those tools interact with the light in real time.
As a DP, you have that control too to bake that look in. So when it does go to post, they can't take that away, you know? Or
Yeah,
just be like,
true.
oh yeah, we were gonna add this effect, but no, we're just gonna change this.
Totally. Which sometimes gets lost in translation or in the conversation, or it's a quick turnaround and you don't get included in those conversations. And yeah, this just puts the control back into the hands of the cinematographer, which is great. We're all biased, but we love it.
It's an interesting time because now the lab, the development lab, can be on a cart on set. So that's what I always think of. The DIT cart is your lab. You're right there. Let's make sure that the digital negative is getting processed and that the representational information for color is happening in real time, so that even if it's not baked into the recording, that the lab notes essentially travel with the production all the way through to post. And you know, there's many times I've done a project where I'm like, we really worked hard on this, and yet somehow it got stepped on. I don't know what happened here, but you know, it's part of the deal, it's part of the drill, and we just have to become robust, and we live with that. But there's times where I cringe when I see my own work that wasn't handled the way that we established it on the film set on the day, color-wise or with filtration even. I mean, you can't take the diffusion out, but they'll try.
Yeah. Well, that's why you test beforehand. Like, you know, ultimately it's a creative tool, which is subjective. Some people love diffusion, some people hate diffusion, some people, you know, only like certain types, or there's some out there that maybe they haven't tested. Or it's the same story as, you know, the anamorphic versus spherical. It's like it's a creative choice. You know, another way of interpreting the footage into the art. And I think, like you mentioned it earlier, like there's such a beautiful sort of crossroads between the technical and the artistic of cinematography, and that's like, yeah, it's just such a great part of it.
So your filters, you laminate the filter substrate in between the glass?
Yeah, for the diffusion, it is squished in between.
So that's something people should be conscious of out there when you're buying filters. Is there's pros and cons, but sometimes the filter substrate is actually on the outside of the glass, and if that's the case, it can be worn off easier, right? So if you're scratching the filter and it becomes damaged, in essence, then, you know, very sensitive, especially in the field.
Yeah.
And so to have the filter substrate laminated in between the glass is really nice.
Totally, yeah. And most filters nowadays come with what's called an MRC coating, a multi-resistant coating, which is gonna, you know, prevent water droplets, oil, fingerprints, etc., and to an extent, you know, damage as well. But it is a piece of glass, and if you are, you know, handling it in a real world set environment that oftentimes is fast and dirty, it can, you know, over time, of course, there is an advantage of like having the particles of the diffusion inside the two pieces of glass, for sure.
Do you have a favorite filter from your collection that you'd like to tell us about from the Element Filters lineup?
I mean, I really do love, from the Element Filters lineup specifically, or in general? Yeah,
and then we could dig into broader, like if there's other ones that you're fans of too.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously we took inspiration for the Glimmer Glass and the Promise. I'm a big Glimmer Glass fan, and that was like sort of the motivation of making these. We have right now in our Element Filters lineup just clear filters, ND filters, and this new diffusion series called Opaline. I don't have a favorite one purely because what we've done with this lineup is, in addition to your standard 1/2, quarter, and eighth strengths, we have a 1/16 and a 1/32 strength as well. And the reason for that A is just if you want a super, super subtle look, this gives you that option, but B, a lot of people don't realize that when you're shooting on tighter lenses, you're inherently more punched in on the particles in the diffusion filter. And so the theory is that when you shoot on a wider lens, you use a stronger diffusion, and when you switch to a tighter lens, you also swap your diffusion to something more subtle, and then it'll match your look. So the reason I don't have a favorite is because I have been swapping them alongside my focal lengths to try to make it as, you know, matched as possible, which I think goes into what you guys were saying earlier about like putting the control back into the camera. so you don't have to look at it in post and be sad about how your work
So this
looks
is
at
the
end of day.
strongest.
That is the
And you
strongest
match
one.
the strongest with the more telephoto Orion.
We have, yeah, just for people to be able to see it at home. If you're watching on your phone on Instagram, it's quite small. So for the effect to come across through that stream, we have put in.
Do you
the,
mind
the
walking up
strongest one, but-
to walk up to minimum focal for me? I'm gonna. So we got the ND. You got the ND.
We have a 0.3 external ND, and then whatever you put in camera there on the Venice.
Great. So I wanted to open up the stop on the lens a little more to show.
They're a little dark on stream if you can pull the internal.
Sure. I'm at a. I like that, what that does to the background and then the fall off.
Just in terms of how
The whole
it
thing is like a
blends
little
it
more
together.
diffused. Back up just a hair for me. You can stand up so you're not hurting your back.
Yeah, so this is a pretty extreme combo with the 100mm Orion and the 1 strength. That's, you're getting into full
Yeah.
dream mode.
I wanted to for sure kind of make sure everyone out there could see through the stream, through the encoding.
Absolutely.
You want to switch to a half just so
Sure,
we could
yeah,
see.
we can absolutely switch.
So
to
this is a full right now for everyone who's watching on the stream. Tucker's going to switch to a half so we can just see the difference real quick. I mean, this is clear, so no filter, no Opaline diffusion there.
Alright, so we'll put the half in. That's with the half.
Nice.
I can audition it without the half. With the half.
I'll buy that.
Buying it.
I'm gonna
That's really good.
I'm gonna pan over too so we could flare off this
Off the practical light,
Aperture
yeah.
LS60 we have here. Yeah, do you mind panning that into me and flaring me? Yeah, look at that.
Bloomage, as they say.
I like that. That's really cool. Okay, you got a fan.
You got a fan, that's good. Because you saw these very briefly a few weeks ago, right, when we brought them by. And so
Yeah.
this is really Dan's first impression of the Opaline.
And then I'll
Which
go
is
ahead and
good.
stop down. I'll turn off the ND completely and stop down just a little bit.
We
So
also have a 0.3 I can pull if you
okay, you can
prefer.
sit back down.
Okay.
Nice. Yeah, you can see the way that it blooms. You get a little bit of a veiling flare. It's nice. Very attractive. Put that on your LinkedIn profile, Eric.
New headshot. No AI needed to create it.
Cool. All right. Well, let's see if there's any questions from people online. What do people out there want to ask Tucker? You could ask me too, I guess, if you want. Go ahead, Aldous. What do we got?
Will you have these around for Wednesday, Wednesday?
Will we have these around this Wednesday?
We can get you a set, absolutely, yes. And we are also planning to do a separate Wednesday with all of the filters where we'll have people come and, you can demo them in person.
So
there'll
be on
a-
the lookout. If you haven't heard about Wednesday, listen up, pals. Every Wednesday, we do an open house event, community event. It's called Wednesday, from 10:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. here at our Glendale, California headquarters. If you can't make it to Wednesday, don't worry because it's every week. So you shouldn't have too much fear of missing out. Just a taste if you can't make it every Wednesday. I'm here every Wednesday.
It's great.
Rain or shine.
I've been just as a fan of Atlas Lens Co. And if you haven't seen the new Mercury series or just want to test the Ryans or some filters, it's awesome. If you are in LA, come by.
And if
Yeah.
you can't make it to Glendale, California for a Wednesday, email us, we will set up a virtual demo for you. So as far as I'm aware, we're the only lens company in the world doing virtual demos. You can actually connect with a live feed direct from the camera, interact with our team, direct us remotely as if it's your film set and you're a million miles away. We'll record the clips and let you download the dailies from the shoot. So it's like you're shooting a remote village shoot.
Yeah, it's pretty
and
awesome.
You can have dailies to review, ask questions about any of our lenses, experience them, and then get clips for yourself. Someone I heard is going to make a feature that's entirely directed remotely with just our virtual demos. I think that's going to be pretty weird, but let's see what happens.
It's a great tool though. Like if you live in a town that doesn't have access to rental houses yeah, that's pretty awesome you guys do that.
And we're doing the same thing for NAB. So if you'd like to schedule a one-on-one personal experience where you're visiting us at the NAB event in April. Are you going to NAB?
TBD. The filters will be there.
Okay.
My presence is yet to be determined. Yes.
Well, be on the lookout for a form you can fill out to set up a direct meeting with any of our colleagues here at Atlas, get a hands-on personal experience demonstration, and if you can't make it to NAB, you could get a one-on-one virtual demo through Apple Vision Pro, so it'll be just like you are at the Atlas booth. So you could actually have an avatar. The avatar may be me, it may be Aldous, who knows, you could control us remotely. It'll be just like GTA 5.
So what is the proper way to handle and load these filters into the matte box?
For sure. Yeah, so it is a piece of glass, which naturally you have to be pretty careful with. There's typically, there's the pouch. This is the pouch. This is a pretty standard pouch that most filters come in these days. It's just a soft pouch. If you are a veteran AC, you'll know how to remove these very carefully without getting any fingerprints on them. But the philosophy is sort of just pull it open, push the filter up. I think you can see that. And
Like a push pop.
And to always hold it by the edges. So on a standard filter tray like this one, the filter, you don't actually see the entire filter. Like part of the edge of the filter is overlapped on the filter tray. So as long as you're just touching the edge of the filter, you're not going to get any fingerprints that are going to be in front of your image. I like to grab it by the sides, horizontally, if that makes sense, for the sake of putting it into the tray as such. At
This
a
is
bit
an
of
important
angle.
part. So you're going to want to have the tray with the open side facing upward.
Yes.
So that if you
This is the
accidentally
open side.
drop it, the filter just lands into the tray.
Precisely, yeah. So as
You'll
long
never
as it's-
drop it though.
Yeah, don't drop
That
it.
never happened.
Never. Yeah. That's what clear filters are for, to be broken. But yeah, if you, as Dan just said, if you have it tilted like this and then you just drop it, it's just going to fall. And then you pull the little tab on the filter tray and it locks it into place. So now if I put it down, it's not going to fall out in any direction. And then
Very
you just slot it in.
satisfying.
Very
this-
satisfying.
The spring-loaded click is probably one of the most satisfying physical experiences in
It's quite
camera
nice.
world.
Yeah, it's an assistant camera person's dream for sure. And once you do it a handful of times, you get the flow for it, and then it just becomes natural. And one of those things that you do it enough times, and it feels
Then
like
you start getting ASMR from filter loading.
Precisely. Yeah, it becomes an addiction. Yeah, like me. And then you start your own filter company, and it's a slippery slope from there, basically.
When/why should I use, a front matte box ND instead of internal ND or a rear ND?
Totally. So yeah, again, that is a choice based on the type of shoot you're doing. If you have ACs, obviously loading filters is way more convenient, but there's a lot more to it than that. Our filters, our ND filters, are what's called a hot mirror ND filter, which has a mirror on the outside of the filter that isolates and reflects infrared light. And so depending on the type of camera that you're shooting, especially if it's more consumer, prosumer camera, it might not have very good IR cut in the OLPF, which is a filter that's built into the camera.
That's short for optical low pass filter. So
That's correct, yeah.
what that's doing is filtering wavelengths of light at specific frequencies so that you get less of a screen door or moire effect if you're looking at high resolution, high detail things.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at, for instance, my couch where there's like a very fine pattern, the pixel pitch of the sensor might match the pixel pitch of the couch, and then you start seeing all kinds of banding and trippy waves, right?
Yeah. It sounds backwards, but it blurs the image together to make
Just enough.
Yeah, just enough to get rid of that moire. But to answer the question about the infrared light, like oftentimes, our eyes see a certain spectrum of visible light, and there is infrared and ultraviolet light beyond that. And some cameras can see more of that. You take, or sometimes even in a creative tool, you take Dune 2, where a whole segment of the movie was shot in infrared exclusively, which you wouldn't want to use RND filters for that because you wouldn't see anything. But it does prevent that infrared light pollution. And when you are outside or in an environment with big tungsten lighting that has a lot of infrared potential for infrared light pollution, and your talent is wearing a black t-shirt, oftentimes that'll come across as magenta in camera if the infrared light is not filtered out of the image.
And fun fact, a lot of it has to do with the dyes that actually make the shirt black, and then their relationship with the wavelengths of light, and then how
it
human
bounces,
vision sees those shirts versus how machine vision can see those wavelengths
Yeah.
of light. So
Yeah.
I'm really into dyes and studying dye and color information right now. So,
That's a
one of my
whole
interests, a whole nother rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Another interesting point is people often, there's this huge sort of debate where there's people that love matte boxes and hate matte boxes, and then there's people who get really mad when they see people using a camera without a matte box on the front. And ultimately, I think it's kind of a personal choice. So like, why the no matte box hate, that's really up to the user. But the purpose of a matte box is to avoid off-axis stray light entering the lens if you don't want it. And back in the day when people were like, we need an absolutely perfect image where we have no stray light, people would put the matte box to avoid, reflections from contaminating the image or illuminating the glass elements inside the lens when you don't want that. So if you're outside on a hot day and there's all kinds of things bouncing around, cars driving by, you don't want someone's stray light mirror reflection coming into the lens unless you do want that. So
Yeah.
people would go as far as putting what they call hard mats onto the front of the matte box to really narrow down the field of view of the lens, just be outside of the field of view of what the focal length of the lens is, so that there's even less stray light entering the lens. If you're trying to flare the lens, a hard mat and a matte box might be counterintuitive to that. So it really is a creative choice, but a technical tool that's available to us. Something that we don't have on the matte box right now is called an eyebrow shade, and that's what you can use to flag light from the top, but there's also side eyebrows and a bottom eyebrow. Really nice tools to have. Makes your camera look like Johnny Five. Probably if you don't know what a matte box is for, you probably don't know that movie Short Circuit, but shout out Short Circuit 2. Watch those streaming services everywhere or at your local Blockbuster.
Can you show how the diffusion is different based on focal length?
Yeah, for sure. What do we have behind us lens-wise
You
here?
want to go to a 32?
Sure, we
gotta-
can swap to a
Yeah.
32. And we can show that.
Yours?
Mine? Alright, so that's the 32. We still have, I believe, the half in. So the theory is mostly that you should walk down in diffusion number as you walk up in focal length number. This is a pretty, this is a half on the 32, which is going to look less diffused than it looked on the 100 mil that we previously had. I'll get out of the frame here. But you can still see the halation of the light.
Do you want to walk up and then that way you can occlude the flare too? So keep coming this way. Walk over. There. Now you block that one. So we still have the wash from the outside. And that's showing the diffusion really nice around the edges of the garage door there, the roll-up door. So you can see sort of the milkiness of that garage door and the way that it's diffusing, but you get plenty of contrast over here on this side of Eric's face.
Yeah.
So it's really nice. I'm a
Smooths
fan
it
of
out.
this.
And there's two different types of diffusion, broadly speaking. You have white diffusion and black diffusion. The Opaline falls into the category of a white diffusion, which tries to maintain your contrast levels rather than lifting them. Again, that's just a creative choice, creative decision that you can make based on how you want your image to look. But yeah, this is what it looks like on the wider lens.
Could we see the super light one, the
Sure.
16th?
Should we
And then we
swap
could
the
go
16th?
from, so you're on half right now.
We're on a half.
So we're going to go to 16th to show a very light one. And you'll see the way that changes the characteristics of the image. This is no filter, hashtag. And then we'll slip in a full so you could see it go absolutely haywire with diffusion.
So is there any reason that we should or should not stack any of these filters?
So the diffusion, you can absolutely stack it. The only catch with that is, and this is why what Dan was talking about earlier, some people don't like diffusion filters, is it can affect the way your image flares. Naturally, the more elements of glass, not just in the lens, but in front of your lens, it affects how, especially when you have a point source light like we do in the background here, how that light is going to refract around the image. With the hot mirror ND filters, we don't recommend stacking them with anything except for a clear filter in front, just because it has, I'll show the one of the denser ones, it has this very mirrored surface, which reflects the infrared light away, but the catch with that is the mirror has to be facing outward to reflect the infrared light. And if you were to stack this behind, it just creates an environment where more light can bounce around between the filters, which naturally you probably don't want unless you're going for some wild creative effect. But don't recommend stacking them or putting anything in front of them unless it's a clear filter, which the light will just pass right through.
Like you
Yeah.
said, hot mirror surface is on the outside, so the mirror is going to bounce a lot more contamination back and forth off that surface.
Yeah,
so that could
precisely,
be
yeah.
problematic. Try it in testing if you want to see. If you want to
Exactly.
experiment and get weird,
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that.
Come to the Wednesday Lens Day and see for yourself and shine a flashlight into the matte box and see what happens. 'Cause
And
it's-
then Eric, just lean off for a second once we switch back to your camera. So lean to let the flare in, so you can see.
Okay.
Just let it. Yeah, there we go. And then go ahead and cover it. And this is the 16th.
That is the
Opaline,
16th,
right?
yeah. So this is a lot more subtle, especially
Great.
on a wider focal length.
So now let's go absolutely ham and throw a full Opaline in there just so we
Totally.
can show
The before and the after.
something absolutely bonkers.
Yeah, take a mental picture of this. That's the 16th. That's without the 16th.
While we're swapping filters, be sure to come to tomorrow's Wednesday Lens Day. We're doing a collaboration with Kodak. We have special guest Amy Vincent ASC. We're going to do a micro anamorphic on photo film workshop where we have Amy Vincent guiding us, doing a little micro tutorial about how she would approach lighting a scene and then shooting it on stills on Kodak film, which is not something she's done a lot, neither have I, but I'm really excited to do it.
That's pretty cool.
And should be a lot of fun. So we're going to let people actually interact and engage and take their own photos with the Kodak film. We're going to develop it and make the negatives available for digital download in high resolution later, so you can experiment with the negatives, get your own portrait of yourself or your friends, and take plenty of portraits and have a lot of fun. So it should be a really fun, engaging, and interactive experience. A lot of exciting film things happening tomorrow on film with Kodak. Come on down to Wednesday Lens Day. Can't wait to see you there tomorrow. Atlas Lens Co. headquarters in Glendale, 10:30 to 1:30. See you there.
It's not every day you get to get your hands on film.
True.
So if you haven't done that before, check it out. This is the one strength, so it will be a lot more dramatic. Yeah, as you can see near the opening of the garage
Kawaii.
there, it's full dream mode.
I like. Can we just make a movie about Eric like this?
Yeah, that's a day in the life of.
I don't know if anyone will watch that.
I'd watch it.
Comment,
Visually, it looks
comment
good,
below
but
if you'd watch
story-wise,
that. Yeah, there we go.
So when designing these, what elements of what's in the frame right now were you really pushing for?
Yeah, I mean, this is an extreme version that I would rarely use. I would say the instances would be like if you're doing a music video where the creative is super different and weird, or you have like a dream sequence, is when I would lean toward using the heavier stuff. The elements that I really liked about it is what it does to the skin in terms of just softening everything just a little bit, especially when you are shooting with super sharp lenses. That can be a really nice attribute that people have. I personally don't love diffusion filters that raise the contrast levels, and so for me it was important to maintain the contrast levels, but while maintaining the nice little bloom that you get, obviously in this case going over to the garages and seeing that practical is very extreme version of that, but when you walk down to the lower diffusion strengths, it just adds a nice smooth touch to the way the highlights act in your image, essentially.
So what strength would you use on a focal length like this?
Yeah, I might run a quarter on a 32 mil. It's enough to really feel it, but not enough that it overpowers your image, like we're experiencing right now. But really, again, it just depends on the creative for the project, and as a DP, you would have those conversations with your director as far as like, what do you want it to look like? Obviously, lens choice comes into account with that as well, and how many characteristics the lens has, and yeah, how much of a look you want to have, and in what direction, if that makes sense.
Awesome. Okay. You got anything else coming there? You got any questions, Eric?
oh, no, you count through pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, we're a super small company. It's it's just made out of the love of filmmaking and the love of filtration and optics and everything. So if anyone has any questions, reach out on our Instagram, or it's just at Element Filters, and we'll have people respond. And you can come test them out at Wednesday Lens Day as well, which is a great way to get hands-on experience.
I'd say stay posted too, because we're gonna do like an Element Filters Wednesday Lens Day.
Yeah, we'll do a specific one. Where we'll feature the filters, and I'll be here so you can ask any questions in person. Or if you're not in LA, then reach out online.
Awesome. What's coming next for Element?
Yeah, we have some exciting stuff that is hopefully coming at NAB that I can't say much about. But if you are going to be there, stay tuned. There's exciting conversations happening. That's all I'm going to say. It's a tease. I don't want to say too much too soon, but we're super excited about some potential partnerships that are in the works, and new products we're working on that, of course, will come down the line. But NAB will be the newest, the closest new announcement, so to speak, which is super exciting.
Awesome.
That's super cool.
Anything else you want to mention before we close it out?
I don't think so. If there's any other questions, of course, let me know. And thanks so much to Atlas for having me out. I'm a big fan of the Orion series. I've shot a series of music videos on, and just recently got to test the Mercuries for the first time. And the sort of mission behind my company as well is like, how do we make these filmmaking tools that seem so inaccessible when you're starting out your career, just because the cost is so astronomical in a lot of ways. And I pretty much ripped off Dan's business model of like, how do we make this more more accessible? And so, our filtration is a lot more accessible cost-wise, but we try to maintain, that same high caliber of quality, which is really what, you guys have done in the anamorphic space, which is awesome. So,
But you can't write taglines like I can. Like, put those filters in these matte boxes today.
That's our new, I'm going to steal that one.
You could have it.
It's
You
been
can
a pleasure.
imagine where I'm going with that next. Or can you?
Or can you? Yeah. I want to hear all your ND puns after this. We're going to have an email chain of just filter
Indeed.
puns. Yeah.
Indeed.
Indeed. Man, you're on fire.
They've suffered enough.
They have, yeah. We let them go.
All right, thank you. We'll see you at Wednesday, and if not, we'll see you at NAB, or we'll see you at another Wednesday, and if not, we'll see you on a Vision Quest through a Vision Pro. Sign up, see you there, get a shot glass, have a great time, stay safe. Thank you so much to B. Thank you, Aldous. Thank you, Tucker, for coming in today.
Thank you for having
Thank
me.
you, Eric, for being the most handsome model we've had this week.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, you did a great job.
And
Talent.
thanks to Vontae for laughing at my jokes.
Thanks, everyone.
See you next time. Yak Shamash.